The arrival. The transport ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, its hull groaning under the strain of the cursed galaxy's unpredictable gravitational forces. Zax, a young Visurian with iridescent scales and 4 arms, pressed his face against the viewport, his large golden eyes widening at the sight before him. A desolate star system sprawled across the inky void, its planets scared and misshapen. Ribbons of cosmic energy twisted through space, remnants of some ancient cataclysm that had torn reality asunder. At the center of this chaos hung a small, unremarkable world, a dull gray orb that seemed to absorb what little light reached it. "Last stop, meet," growled the Craxian guard, his tentacles wrapping around Zax's slender shoulders. "Welcome to your new home." Zax's gills fluttered in fear as he was shoved towards the airlock. He'd heard whispers about this place, the school of exiled humans, but never imagined he'd end up here. It was meant to be a punishment for the worst of the worst, a place where the galaxy's rejects were sent to be forgotten. As the ship docked with the station orbiting the gray planet, Zax clutched the small data chip hidden beneath his scales. It contained all that remained of his former life, his academic achievements, his family's history, the bright future that had been snatched away, all because he dared to question the Supreme Council's edicts. The airlock hissed open, revealing a sterile white corridor lined with armed guards. Their faces were hidden behind opaque visors, but Zax could feel their disdain radiating through their armor. He was marched forward, his bare feet slapping against the cold metal floor. At the end of the corridor stood a hulking figure, easily twice Zax's height and 5 times as wide. As they drew closer, Zax realized it wasn't a living being at all, but a massive robot. Its chrome surface reflected the harsh lighting, and a single red eye swiveled to focus on the new arrival. "Specimen ZX-2791, the robot intoned, its voice a grating metallic rasp. "Crime. Sedition against the Galactic Order. Sentence. Compulsory education and rehabilitation at the School of Exiled Humans. Duration indefinite." Zax opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. He tried to explain himself at the trial, to make them understand that he'd only been seeking the truth, but the Supreme Council hadn't been interested in explanations. They'd seen his questions as a threat to their authority, and now he was paying the price. The robot's eye flashed, and a beam of light swept over Zax from head to toe. "Biometric profile recorded. Proceed to decontamination." Before Zax could react, a panel in the floor opened beneath him. He plummeted down a twisting tube, tumbling end over end until he was unceremoniously dumped into a chamber filled with swirling mist. The acrid smell burned his gills, and he gasped for breath as the chemicals stripped away layers of dead skin and neutralized any potential pathogens. When the mist cleared, Zax found himself in a small, featureless room. A bundle of gray fabric lay on a metal bench, his new uniform. As he struggled into the ill-fitting clothes, a holographic screen flickered to life on the wall. "Greetings, new student," said a cheerful voice that didn't quite mask the underlying menace. "Welcome to your orientation. Here at the School of Exiled Humans, we believe in second chances. Through our specialized curriculum, you will learn the error of your ways and become a productive member of galactic society." Zax's antenna twitched skeptically. He'd heard about the school's true purpose: to break the will of those deemed too intelligent or independent for their own good. The specialized curriculum was nothing more than a euphemism for mental conditioning and forced conformity. The hologram continued, showing images of smiling students engaged in various activities. But Zax noticed the vacant look in their eyes, the robotic quality of their movements. It sent a chill down his spine. "Your education will begin immediately," the voice announced. "Please proceed through the door and join your fellow students in the main hall." The wall slid open, revealing a cavernous space filled with hundreds of beings from across the galaxy. Humans made up the majority, but Zax spotted members of dozens of other species, all wearing the same gray uniform, all moving with the same listless shuffle. As Zack stepped into the hall, he felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. Some curious, some hostile, but most disturbingly empty. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing hearts. He couldn't let this place break him. He had to find a way to survive, to hold on to his identity and his dreams of uncovering the truth. A loud buzzer sounded, and the crowd began to move towards a series of doors at the far end of the hall. Zack allowed himself to be swept along with the flow, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of his surroundings. He needed to gather information, to understand how this place worked if he had any hope of escaping. As he neared one of the doors, Zack felt a hand grab his arm. He turned to see a human girl with fiery red hair and eyes that burned with an intensity that stood out among the sea of blank faces. "New guy, huh?" she whispered, her grip tightening. "Word of advice, keep your head down and your mouth shut if you want to survive here." Before Zack could respond, she melted back into the crowd. He was left with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. Not everyone in this school was as broken as they appeared. Perhaps there was hope after all. The door loomed before him, a portal to whatever torments awaited in his first class. Zack squared his shoulders and stepped forward. He may have been sent here to be dummed up, but he was determined to prove that the spirit of curiosity and defiance couldn't be so easily extinguished. As the door sealed behind him with a final ominous hiss, Zack couldn't shake the feeling that his true education was only just beginning. Unlikely alliances. The classroom was a stark contrast to the chaos of the main hall. Rows of identical desks faced a large holoscreen, each occupied by a student staring blankly ahead. Zack hesitated in the doorway, his forearms twitching nervously as he searched for an empty seat. "ZX2791. Proceed to your assigned station," came a monotonous voice from overhead. A soft blue light illuminated one of the desks near the back of the room. Zack made his way down the aisle, acutely aware of the subtle shifts in posture as he passed. Though most students kept their eyes forward, he could feel their curiosity, or was it hostility, radiating towards him. As he sat down, the desk came to life. A holographic interface sprang up, displaying a dizzying array of subjects. Human history revised, Galactic conformity 101, applied obedience, and more. Zack's heart sank as he realized the true nature of the education he would be receiving. Today's lesson, the futility of individual thought, announced the disembodied voice. Please direct your attention to the main screen. The holoscreen flickered to life, showing images of various alien species engaged in creative pursuits, art, music, scientific discovery. But as the presentation continued, these images were slowly replaced by scenes of uniformity and order. The message was clear. Individuality led to chaos, while conformity brought peace and progress. Zack felt a wave of revulsion wash over him. He glanced around the room, hoping to see some sign of resistance in his fellow students. Most sat in rapt attention, absorbing the propaganda without question. But a handful scattered throughout the classroom, showed subtle signs of discomfort, a clenched jaw here, a twitching tentacle there. The red-haired human girl from earlier caught his eye. She sat 2 rows ahead, her posture perfect, and her gaze fixed on the screen. But Zack noticed her hands beneath the desk, fingers tapping out a complex rhythm, a code perhaps. As the lesson droned on, Zack found his mind wandering. He couldn't help but think about the warning she had given him. Keep your head down and your mouth shut. Was that truly the key to survival in this place? Or was there more to her message? The class seemed to stretch on for an eternity. By the time the buzzer sounded to signal its end, Zack's head was pounding from the relentless onslaught of mind-numbing information. He stood, stretching his cramped limbs, and noticed a small piece of paper that had been slipped onto his desk. Glancing around to ensure no one was watching, Zack quickly pocketed the note. He followed the stream of students out into the hallway, his heart racing with a mixture of fear and excitement. Once he found a relatively secluded corner, he unfolded the paper with trembling hands. Nutrition Center, Table 7. Trust no one else. Zax's antenna quivered as he committed the message to memory before swallowing the paper. It dissolved instantly on his tongue. Smart, he thought. No evidence left behind. Following the signs and the smell of what passed for food in this place, Zax made his way to the Nutrition Center. It was a vast, echoing chamber filled with long tables and benches. Students shuffled through the serving line, accepting trays of unidentifiable gray mush without complaint. Zax's eyes scanned the room, finally landing on Table 7. The red-haired girl sat there, along with a hulking reptilian being and a willowy, plant-like creature that seemed to sway even in the still air of the cafeteria. As Zax approached, he felt a prickling sensation at the base of his skull, a warning that he was being watched. "Sit," the girl said quietly as he reached the table. "Act natural. Eat your food." Zax complied, forcing himself to take a bite of the flavorless mush. He nearly gagged but managed to swallow it down. "I'm Lyra," the girl continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is Grok." She nodded towards the reptilian. And whisper. The plant being's leaves rustled in what might have been a greeting. Wide Zax began, but Lyra cut him off with a sharp look. "Not here. Not now. We'll talk later. For now, just know that not everything is as it seems in this place. There are ways to resist, to hold on to who you are. But it's dangerous. You have to be sure you're willing to take the risk." Zax nodded slowly, his mind racing. He had come here expecting to fight against the system alone, but now it seemed he had found potential allies. The question was, could he trust them? As if reading his thoughts, Grok leaned in, his scales shimmering under the harsh lighting. "Trust is a luxury we can't afford," he rumbled, his voice like gravel. "But survival, that's a necessity. And in this place, you either band together or you break." Whisper's leaves trembled, and a soft, melodic voice drifted into Zax's mind. "We've all lost something to be here. Homes, families, freedoms. But we haven't lost ourselves. Not yet. And we don't intend to." Zax felt a surge of hope, tempered by caution. He opened his mouth to respond, but Lyra shook her head sharply. A pair of robotic monitors were making their way down the aisle, their sensors sweeping back and forth across the tables. "Remember," Lyra hissed as the robots approached. "Head down, mouth shut. We'll find you when it's safe." As quickly as it had begun, the moment was over. Zax found himself alone again, surrounded by the dull murmur of the cafeteria. But something had changed. He was no longer adrift in a sea of conformity. He had found a lifeline, tenuous though it might be. The rest of the day passed in a blur of propaganda-filled classes and monotonous tasks designed to crush independent thought. But Zax's mind was alight with possibilities. He observed his fellow students more closely now, noting the subtle signs of resistance, a defiant glance here, a moment of hesitation there. As he lay in his cramped bunk that night, Zax's thoughts turned to the future. He had come to this place expecting to be broken, to have his mind dulled and his spirit crushed. Instead, he had found a spark of hope. It was small, fragile, and dangerous, but it was there. Tomorrow, he decided, he would begin to push back against the system. In small ways at first, testing the boundaries of what was possible. And when the time was right, he would find Lyra and the others again. Together, perhaps they could find a way not just to survive this place, but to overcome it. As sleep finally claimed him, Zax's last conscious thought was of the data chip still hidden beneath his scales. The knowledge it contained, the truths he had discovered that had led him here, might just be the key to unraveling the mysteries of the school of exiled humans and the cursed galaxy itself. In the darkness of the dormitory, surrounded by the soft breathing and occasional whimpers of his fellow students, Zax allowed himself a small smile. The Supreme Council had sought to punish him, to strip away his curiosity and his will to question. Instead, they had given him a new purpose, new allies, and a chance to uncover truths far greater than he had ever imagined. The real education, it seemed, was just beginning. The uprising begins. Days blurred into weeks as Zack settled into the grueling routine of the school of exiled humans. Each morning brought new lessons in conformity, each afternoon fresh exercises in crushing individuality. But beneath the surface, a current of resistance was growing stronger. Zack had taken Lyra's advice to heart, keeping his head down and his mouth shut in public. But in the margins of his existence, in hushed whispers between classes, in coded taps on desktops, in fleeting glances across the nutrition center, he was slowly building a network of allies. It was during one of the mandatory recreational periods that Zack finally got his chance to speak openly with Lyra and the others. The students had been herded into a large, featureless room and instructed to engage in approved social interactions, a thinly veiled excuse for the staff to observe their behavior. Zack made his way to a corner where Lyra, Grok, and Whisper had gathered. As he approached, Grok shifted his massive bulk, creating a natural barrier between their group and the watchful eyes of the robot monitors. "Took you long enough," Lyra muttered, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "We were starting to think you'd given up on us." Zax's gills fluttered in what passed for a Visurian chuckle. "Not a chance. I've been watching, learning. This place, it's even worse than I imagined." Whisper's leaves rustled in agreement, her melodic voice drifting into their minds. "The corruption runs deep. It's not just about control. There's something more sinister at work here." Grok nodded, his scales rippling with suppressed anger. "We've been gathering information, piecing together the puzzle. But we're missing something crucial. That's where you come in, newcomer." Zax felt a flicker of excitement mixed with apprehension. "What do you mean?" Lyra leaned in close, her voice barely above a whisper. "We know you were sent here for asking questions, dangerous questions, about the Supreme Council, about the true nature of the cursed galaxy. We think your research might be the key to understanding what's really going on here." Zax's hand instinctively moved to the spot where his data chip was hidden. "How did you?" "We have our ways," Grok rumbled. "The question is, are you willing to trust us with what you know? It could be the difference between rotting in this place forever and finding a way to bring the whole system crashing down." For a moment, Zax hesitated. The information on that chip had already cost him everything: his freedom, his future, his family. But as he looked at the faces of his newfound allies, he saw something that had been missing from his life for too long: hope. With a deep breath, Zax made his decision. "All right, but not here. We need somewhere safe, somewhere they can't monitor us." Lyra's eyes gleamed with a fierce intelligence. "Leave that to me. Tonight, after lights out. Be ready." As they dispersed, resuming their facade of mindless conformity, Zax felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through his body. For the first time since arriving at the school, he felt truly alive. That night, as the dormitory settled into uneasy silence, Zax lay awake, every sense on high alert. Just as he was beginning to wonder if Lyra had changed her mind, he felt a gentle tap on his shoulder. "Follow me," came a whisper so soft he almost thought he had imagined it. But as he opened his eyes, he saw Lyra's outline in the darkness, already moving towards the door. With a silence born of necessity, Zax slipped from his bunk and followed. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, using hand signals to communicate and ducking into shadows whenever a patrol passed by. Finally, they'd reached what appeared to be a dead end. Lyra pressed her hand against a seemingly blank wall, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing a narrow passageway. "Maintenance tunnels," she explained as they squeezed through. "The robots can't fit in here, and the staff are too lazy to check them manually." After what felt like hours of crawling through dusty, claustrophobic spaces, they emerged into a small room filled with humming machinery. Grok and Whisper were already there, along with a few other students Zax recognized from his classes. "Welcome to the Resistance," Lyra said, a hint of pride in her voice. It's not much, but it's the one place in this entire facility where we can speak freely. As Zax's eyes adjusted to the dim light, he saw that the walls were covered in diagrams, star charts, and strings connecting various pieces of information. It looked like the work of a mind teetering on the edge of madness or brilliance. "Now," Grok said, his massive form looming in the cramped space, "show us what you've got." With trembling hands, Zax retrieved the data chip from its hiding place. He hesitated for a moment, then handed it to Lyra. "Everything I discovered, everything that got me sent here, it's all on this." Lyra inserted the chip into a battered but functional datapad. As the information began to scroll across the screen, her eyes widened. This changes everything. For the next several hours, they pored over Zax's research, comparing it to the information they had gathered themselves. A picture began to emerge, one far more terrifying than any of them had imagined. The school of exiled humans wasn't just a punishment for freethinkers and rebels. It was a testing ground, a place where the Supreme Council could perfect its methods of control before implementing them across the entire galaxy. But there was more. Hidden in the data were references to something called Project Singularity, a plan to merge organic consciousness with machine intelligence, creating a hive mind that would eliminate individual thought entirely. "This is why they're so obsessed with conformity," Whisper's voice echoed in their minds. "They're preparing us for assimilation." The gravity of the situation settled over the group like a shroud. They had uncovered a conspiracy that threatened not just their own freedom, but the very nature of sentient existence throughout the galaxy. "So what do we do?" one of the other students asked, fear evident in their voice. Lyra stood, her eyes blazing with determination. "We fight back. We use their own systems against them. We find a way to expose the truth and bring this whole twisted experiment crashing down." Zax felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration. This was so much bigger than he had ever imagined. But as he looked around at the faces of his fellow rebels, each bearing the scars of their own battles against oppression, he knew he was exactly where he needed to be. "I'm in," he said, his voice steady despite the trembling of his gills. "Whatever it takes." As they began to plan their uprising, Zax realized that his punishment had become his purpose. The Supreme Council had sought to break him, to erase his identity and crush his spirit. Instead, they had given him the key to their own undoing. In the bowels of the school of exiled humans, surrounded by unlikely allies from across the galaxy, a spark of revolution was igniting. And Zax, the curious Visurian who had dared to ask dangerous questions, found himself at the heart of a movement that would shake the foundations of the cursed galaxy itself. The real battle was about to begin, outsmarting the system. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of clandestine meetings and covert operations. Zax and his fellow rebels worked tirelessly, using every scrap of free time to further their cause. They had to be careful. One misstep could mean discovery and a fate worse than the dumb-up process they were already subjected to. Lyra proved to be a natural leader, her quick wit and strategic mind guiding their efforts. Grok's strength and intimidating presence provided cover for their more overt activities, while Whisper's empathic abilities allowed them to sense incoming danger before it arrived. Zax found his role as well. His natural curiosity and analytical mind, the very traits that had landed him in this predicament, became invaluable assets. He pored over the data they'd collected, looking for patterns and weaknesses in the school's systems. It was during one of these late-night analysis sessions that Zax made a breakthrough. "Look at this," he whispered excitedly, pointing to a complex series of codes scrolling across his datapad. The others gathered around, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of the screen. "What are we looking at?" Grok rumbled, his scaled brow furrowed in concentration. "It's the base code for the school's central AI," Zax explained. "The one that controls everything from the lesson plans to the security systems. And look here," he pointed to a recurring sequence. "There's a flaw in its logic protocols. A backdoor, hidden so deep I almost missed it." Lyra's eyes widened as she grasped the implications. You mean we could potentially control the entire system? Zax nodded, his antenna twitching with excitement. Not just control it. We could rewrite it. Change the very nature of this place from within. A ripple of excitement passed through the group, but Whisper's melodic voice cut through their enthusiasm. It won't be that simple. The AI will have safeguards, fail-safes, and even if we succeed, the Supreme Council will surely notice if their prize school suddenly stops producing obedient drones. She's right, Lyra said, her face set in grim determination. We need to be smart about this. Subtle. We can't just flip a switch and free everyone overnight. They spent the next several days planning, debating various strategies. Finally, they settled on a multi-phase approach. Phase 1 involved subtly altering the content of their daily lessons. Instead of mindless obedience, they would inject critical thinking exercises disguised as loyalty tests. It was a risky move. Too much too soon could alert the authorities. But done carefully, it could plant seeds of doubt and independent thought in the minds of their fellow students. Phase 2 was more technical. Using the backdoor Zax had discovered, they would gradually adjust the parameters of the dumb-up process. Instead of suppressing intelligence, it would enhance it, all while appearing to function normally to any outside observers. The final phase was the most dangerous. They would need to access the school's main computer core directly, uploading a virus that would not only free the students but broadcast the truth about Project Singularity to the entire galaxy. As they put their plan into motion, Zax felt a mix of excitement and terror. Each small victory, a classmate showing a flicker of independent thought, a security camera conveniently malfunctioning, was tempered by the constant fear of discovery. Weeks passed, and slowly but surely they began to see results. The vacant stares of their fellow students were replaced by furtive glances and whispered questions. The robotic movements became more natural, more individual, but their progress didn't go unnoticed. The staff, mostly automated but with a few organic overseers, began to increase security measures. Random inspections became more frequent, and the punishments for even minor infractions grew harsher. It all came to a head one afternoon during a routine assembly. The students were gathered in the main hall, lined up in perfect rows as a holographic image of the Supreme Council's insignia floated above them. Students of the School of Exiled Humans, a booming voice announced, "It has come to our attention that there are elements of dissent among you. This is unacceptable. The purpose of this institution is to correct such flawed thinking, to prepare you for productive roles in our glorious society." Zax felt his heart racing as he exchanged worried glances with Lyra and the others. Had they been discovered? Therefore, the voice continued, "We will be implementing new security protocols. All students will undergo a full neural scan to detect any signs of rebellious thought. Those found wanting will face reconditioning." A collective shudder passed through the assembly. They all knew what reconditioning meant, a complete wipe of one's personality, leaving nothing but an empty shell to be reprogrammed. As the students were dismissed, Zax and his fellow rebels huddled together in a secluded corner. "This is it," Lyra hissed, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and determination. "We're out of time. We need to act now, before they can implement these new protocols." Grok nodded, his massive fists clenched. "I say we fight our way to the computer core. We have enough allies now. We could overwhelm the guards." But Zax shook his head. "No, that would just confirm their suspicions. We need to be smarter than that." He paused, an idea forming. What if we use their own plan against them? The others looked at him quizzically as he explained his idea. It was risky, perhaps even suicidal. But if it worked, it could give them the access they needed to upload their virus and expose the truth. As they finalized the details of their desperate plan, Zax couldn't help but marvel at the irony. He had come to this place expecting to be stripped of his intelligence, his curiosity, his very self. Instead, he found himself at the center of a revolution, using every ounce of his considerable intellect to outsmart a system designed to crush minds like his. The next day, as they lined up for their neural scans, Zax took a deep breath. Everything hinged on the next few moments. As he stepped into the scanning chamber, he silently recited the complex mathematical equations they had devised, a mental shield designed to fool the scanners into detecting only what they wanted to see. The machine hummed to life, bathing him in an eerie blue light. Zax held his breath, waiting for the alarm to sound, for rough hands to drag him away to reconditioning. But the light turned green. He had passed. As he exited the chamber, Zax caught Lyra's eye. She gave him the barest nod of acknowledgement. Their plan had worked. They were in. Now came the hard part, using their newfound access to bring down the entire system. As they made their way to their next class, Zax's mind raced with possibilities and dangers. They were so close to their goal, but one wrong move could spell disaster not just for them, but for the entire galaxy. The uprising had truly begun, and there was no turning back. Escape and revelation. The corridors of the school of exiled humans hummed with an eerie quiet as Zax and his fellow rebels put their plan into motion. Having passed the neural scans, they now had unprecedented access to the facility's inner workings, but time was not on their side. Under the guise of a routine maintenance check, Zax, Lyra, and Gruk made their way towards the central computer core. Whisper remained behind, using her empathic abilities to coordinate their allies and provide early warning of any approaching danger. As they approached the heavily fortified door of the core, Lyra pulled out a small device they had cobbled together from scavenged parts. "Let's hope this works," she muttered, pressing it against the security panel. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft peep, the door slid open. "We're in," Grok rumbled, his massive form blocking the entrance as Zax and Lyra slipped inside. The computer core was a marvel of technology, a crystalline structure that pulsed with energy. Streams of data flowed through its transparent circuits like liquid light. At its center stood a single terminal, their target. Zax's four hands flew across the holographic interface, inputting the complex series of commands they had prepared. "Uploading the virus now," he whispered, his gills fluttering with nervous energy. But as the progress bar crept forward, an alarm suddenly blared to life. Red lights bathed the room in an ominous glow. "They've detected us," Lyra hissed, her eyes wide with panic. Gruk's voice boomed from the doorway. "We've got company coming. Lots of it." Zax's heart raced as he watched the upload slowly progress. 67%. 68%. It wasn't fast enough. They'd be caught before it finished. Suddenly, Whisper's voice echoed in their minds. "The others are creating a diversion. It should buy you some time, but hurry." Through the open door, they could hear the sounds of chaos erupting throughout the facility. Alarms blared, and the thundering of feet echoed through the corridors. 79%. 80%. "Whatever happens," Lyra said, her hand on Zax's shoulder, "we've come too far to give up now." Zax nodded, his resolve strengthening. They had known the risks when they started this. If they failed now, at least they would fail fighting for something they believed in. 91%. 92%. The sound of energy weapons discharging grew closer. Gruk braced himself in the doorway, ready to make a final stand. 98%. 99%. "It's done," Zax cried as the progress bar finally hit 100%. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the crystalline structure of the core began to pulse with a new rhythm. The streams of data changed color, shifting from a cold blue to a warm, vibrant gold. Suddenly, every screen in the facility flickered to life. The face that appeared was not the stern visage of the Supreme Council, but a composite image created from the features of every student in the school. When it spoke, it was with 1,000 voices in perfect harmony. "People of the galaxy, we bring you the truth. The school of exiled humans is not what it seems. It is a testing ground for a sinister plot known as Project Singularity, an attempt to erase individual thought and create a hive mind controlled by the Supreme Council. As the message continued, broadcasting evidence of the Council's crimes to every corner of the cursed galaxy and beyond, Zax and his friends stood in awe of what they had accomplished. But their victory was short-lived. The door to the computer core burst open, and they found themselves surrounded by armed guards and hovering security drones. "Surrender now," a metallic voice commanded, "and your reconditioning will be minimally painful." Zax looked at his friends, saw the determination in their eyes. They had come too far to give up now. As one, they raised their hands. And then chaos erupted. The lights flickered and died. In the darkness, Zax felt a hand grab his arm, pulling him forward. "Run," Lyra's voice hissed in his ear. They sprinted through the darkened corridors, guided by Whisper's telepathic directions. All around them, they could hear the sounds of rebellion. Students rising up against their oppressors, emboldened by the truth they had revealed. As they rounded a corner, they saw it, an emergency escape pod, its hatch already open and waiting. "You first," Grok growled, bodily lifting Zax and tossing him inside. Lyra and Whisper followed, with Grok squeezing his bulk in last. As the hatch sealed shut, Zax caught a final glimpse of the school through the viewport. Fires burned in some sections, while in others, students and staff alike were laying down their weapons, united by the revelation of the truth. With a lurch, the escape pod launched, streaking away from the gray planet and into the swirling chaos of the cursed galaxy. As the school receded into the distance, Zax felt a weight lift from his heart. They had done it. They had exposed the truth and sparked a revolution that would reshape the galaxy. "So," Lyra said, a wry smile on her face as she looked at her unlikely group of friends. "Where to now?" Zax gazed out at the star-filled expanse before them. The cursed galaxy no longer seemed so frightening. Instead, it was full of possibility. "Anywhere," he said, his antennae quivering with excitement. "Everywhere. We have a galaxy to save, after all." As the tiny pod carried them into the unknown, Zax reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had been sent to the school of exiled humans to be dumbed up, to have his curiosity and intellect stripped away. Instead, he had found friendship, purpose, and a cause worth fighting for. The Supreme Council had tried to create a galaxy of mindless drones, but in doing so they had inadvertently forged the very weapons of their own destruction. Free-thinking individuals united in their diversity and strength. As they plotted their next move, Zax knew that the real adventure was just beginning. The cursed galaxy was about to learn a valuable lesson, one that he and his friends had discovered in the unlikeliest of places. True intelligence isn't about conformity. It's about curiosity, creativity, and the courage to question everything. And no force in the universe could ever truly dumb up a mind set on remaining free. The stars stretched out before them, each one a potential ally in their newfound quest. The school of exiled humans was behind them, but the greatest classroom of all, the vast, mysterious universe, lay ahead, waiting to be explored.